Hey, what's good, fam? Welcome to another episode of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Durs and Jeff coming to you with Amanda Goolsby. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
You have such an incredible story. We listened to you on stage. You absolutely crushed the scale conversation, the conversation of scaling your business at the GSD convention. Shout out to Mike Arcee for putting that on and putting such a dope cast of presenters together. You just so happen to be one of those dope people. And as we've just learned prior to the show, you didn't even touch the surface of your story.
Yeah, well, it's tough when you've got 45 minutes to share your whole life story in 45 minutes.
I like how I have to say, I like how when you came on stage, you're like, I didn't get introduced,
but here I am.
I love that. I was like, we looked at each other, that shit was pretty boss right there. That's the way to take the stage.
She owned that shit.
Yeah, that was the way to take the stage.
Well, and then I'm following the circus, right? Like, there was literally like, what might as well have been fire breathers. There's people on stilts, whatever, and then we get to follow that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The LED helmets on stilts. I was like, is this a Dead Mouse concert? What's going on right now?
But it was a great, like, overall just event and production. Like, yes, the speakers that he had, and there were so many people, but I was so impressed as an event overall, and just like their level of service, and they're on top of it. So it was a great event to be a part of.
Absolutely. And we're gonna dive into your story, but I want to make sure I put this question on the table, because now you've moved into the consultation space, right? And you're one of the original employees of Orange Theory in Arizona, and we've seen how that you're a major linchpin in the growth of that here in Arizona. And now that you're in the consultation space, did you get into it because it was just time to move away from the day-to-day operations of franchising, or what? Did you have this dialogue in your head about the challenge? Like, am I really this good? Am I good enough to teach others to do what I do? Or was it just time to move on? Like, what was your thought process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I really, taking myself back through the journey, I'd say like it more came from, I had experienced this transformation in my own life between 2012 when I started with Orange Theory to even like 2014, when around that time I started consulting for different franchisees around the country. So I had started flying. People would call us in Arizona and say, what the heck are you guys doing? And my boss at the time was like, hey dude, I'm married, I have 4 kids. I'm going to start sending you to like go consult for these different franchise startups. So I began like early bits of consulting in 2014, which then for one showed me, hey, I do have a skill set and I do have a level of knowledge about something that people desire and that is needed in the marketplace. And people are wanting to launch these businesses, and they might have a business background, but there's a difference between maybe knowing business and knowing the business of fitness, or the fitness business. And so that kind of gave me this early onset to know that, one, I had the capacity to do it, because I did that in 2014 when I was a baby, like when I really look back on it now. And even more at a bigger scale, it was like there was something inside of me that just kept saying, hey, you're meant to be impacting a lot more people's lives, to be speaking on bigger stages, to be not just in the brand of Orange Theory or just in the world of a single studio, but to be making a bigger impact on the planet. And I felt that like at the deepest sense of my being. And so as I continued my journey of transformation and my scale of helping the brand open, all over the country and even in the UK and doing that internationally, I just thought, hey, you know what? Like there's more. There's more for me. And I didn't really have it wasn't like that. I don't have that conversation of can I, or the imposter of am I good enough? Do I have enough in me? It's more like it was more the need and the desire to make an impact at a bigger level.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's huge. And off the mic, we're gonna peel back further to your like how you started within fitness. You showed me that gnarly scar that you have. Like, go tell us a little bit of that story of like how you got into fitness, like at an early age, and then transition from like, tragedy into like getting into that journey of like building that business and figuring out all those pieces and putting that puzzle together.
Sure. So the early story is like probably 2000, I guess, well, I don't know what year it was exactly, but at the age of 14, I got into an intro to weightlifting class in my high school, and I was the only girl in the whole class. I think maybe there was 2 an intro to weightlifting, like all the football players and whatever, and then there's me. I was in a small school. I grew up in Washougal, Washington, which is like just outside of Portland. But that put me on the path of like I started seeing the strength that I had to transform my body and like the control that I had over seeing my physique change. Then when I was 15 and a half, I started working at a gym, small, independently owned, like mom and pop gym in my hometown. And through high school, it was like right when bodybuilding.com was starting to be a thing, 2005 or something, 2004. I would literally go home and read for like hours a night. It was just like, I'm a learner, like at the core. I just want to learn and learn and learn. And so I would just go study bodybuilding.com. Well, by the time I was a senior, I committed for my senior project in high school, which you have to put in like 50 hours and write a paper on. I wrote a paper on like sports nutrition, and then I dieted and prepped for my first show and competed in figure my senior year in high school, which was crazy.
That's legit.
I love it, man. Because we had this discussion a couple of shows ago. You can't call yourself a bodybuilder if you don't get on stage. You just work out.
Yeah, totally. And it was when I look back on it now, the thing that I'm most grateful for is it taught me a level of discipline that not much can teach you. Like there's so much discipline that goes into that. Now, is it the healthiest for most people? No, like especially for a female at the age of 18, psychologically to go through that process, and the relationship with food and the relationship with my body, and just like there was so much to unpack going through that. But it did put me on this path. So at the age of 18, I got my personal training certification, like literally the week I turned 18, opened my first LLC, got private insurance, and started training out of that gym before I even went to college. So then when I got to WSU, which is where I went to study exercise science, I chose WSU because they had the best rec center. and through college, still like years after college, I was actually here in Scottsdale one night. Like I became known as Rec Girl, because I spent so much time at that damn rec center all through college. I think there's worse things to be known as in college. So.
For sure.
But that put me on the path of fitness. And so at first it was personal training. And then when I went to WSU, I was teaching group fitness classes. I started teaching TRX there because at the time TRX was just beginning, like 2007, starting to get popular. So I was teaching TRX classes, like boot camp classes at the Student Rec Center, and I was training like a full load of clientele while I was studying exercise science and going to school. So few years of that, 2010, I was literally with all the other trainers that I trained with. It was a Snap Fitness facility, and we went out for just a team building day on the river. One of our owners that owned the franchise that we were training out of had a like river house and had some Sea-Doos. So we're out for the day. We're just all having fun. Yeah, we were drinking a little bit. Like, yeah, we were having a good time. And I was 21. And at the end of that day, last run of the night, we're riding these wave runners all day. This other trainer's husband comes up to me and is like, "Hey, would you take me out? I haven't been out all day, but you seem like you know what you're doing, and you seem like you know how to have a good time out there."
Peer pressure is like a mug.
I'm like, "Let's go." So he hops on, and have you ridden on wave runners before?
No, I never have.
Have you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so you know how like when you have someone on the back, if you turn really fast,
You got to go together.
well, you like can throw them off, right? You like turn and then you whip the back end. So I tossed him off a couple of times, just like screwing around. Okay, threw him off, threw it off. Well, he got smart. The third time he gets back on, he like scoots forward and holds on to me. So then I turned around. I'm like, dude, that means that if you fly off,
I fly off.
I fly off. And sure enough, 30 seconds later,
called it.
I accelerated one more time, turned fast. We both went flying. And like just because of my height or my lack thereof, I guess you might say, I just like my knee got caught on the seat.
Yeah.
And I went flying across the water. My leg was just flopping. And yeah, that's how this lovely giant scar from the middle of my calf to the middle of my quad came in place, because I actually, fast forward, found out that I had torn all 4 ligaments in my knee, ACL, MCL, LCL, PCL, and severed the popliteal artery. So I was bleeding internally.
Yep.
When they finally figured it out in the ER that I was bleeding internally, and they said, hey, if we've got to life flight you, your helicopter is going to be here in 5 minutes, and if we don't get you into emergency vascular surgery, it's highly likely that you lose your leg tonight.
Holy shit.
Oh.
Yeah, 21. Dude, that's a... Whew, it's like I still feel it in my body when I just think about that statement.
Yeah.
It was like I saw my future, and I saw my whole life was fitness, my whole identity. Like I was a personal trainer. I am a fitness competitor. You know, I am like fit and healthy and like all these things. I am a group fitness instructor. So I was like, I had built my hobby, my lifestyle, my career, my college education was all built around this identity of fitness, of being shredded, of having a 6-pack. And I saw at the blink of an eye, like that going away.
So diving into the identity thing, you had mentioned it just a little bit, prepping for your first show, and now in the aftermath of the accident, identity, right? When you were at such a influential age, prepping for that first show, what kind of did you have the dysmorphia and stuff like that going into the show? Did you have any of that coming out of the show? What kind of identity things did you? Because I think a lot of girls, women, need to hear that message about show prep in general,
Totally.
Or as they go through their fitness journey and they go from not to hot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there is a psychology to it that you need to that you should be prepared for.
Totally.
That I would say in my 20 years in the gym, women struggle with more.
Totally.
And definitely differently than men do.
Definitely. I would say that it was like at the core, I started having body image and like body image issues in middle school.
Okay.
Like in 7th grade, I remember
before
like
fitness.
before, which is what kind of probably catapulted me into even caring about exercise. Like in middle school, I was counting calories. In middle school and 7th grade, like all my other friends, I'm drinking Diet Coke, which I thought was like what I needed to be doing, you know? But my friends like saw, or I think what it was is that I saw myself developing as a woman quicker. Like I got hips and I was like, okay, my body's changing different than my friends. And so I thought there was something wrong with me. Like I was like, that I have to fix this.
You were the early bloomer.
I was like, there's something that I need to fix. Like this is not meant to be. And there's not great education for women around like supporting them with developing their level of self-worth and self-value at a young age. It's like they're looking to outside of themselves. They're looking to what other people have to say, or comparing themselves to other women for the sake of their own worthiness or their own self-worth and self-value. And unfortunately, if you're always thinking that something outside of yourself is going to get you to feel inside of yourself what you ultimately want to feel, it's a lie.
Right.
It's like you're never going to be able to, on the outward, create the internal feeling that you ultimately want to create. And so that journey through competition, like, it was a big piece of like feeling like I wanted to look a certain way so that I would be loved. Or that, you know, when I look back on it now, like that's not the story in my head but that's ultimately what it came down to. It's like I wanted to look a certain way to feel like I was enough, you know? And even when I think back to like, you know, kind of continuing my process, like even when I chose to get implants in 2013, it was like I chose to get implants because that's what everyone else in the fitness space was doing, and everyone else in Scottsdale was doing. You know, it was like really like, but at the core, when I really check in, it's like, but ultimately it came down to not feeling like I was enough.
Okay. Now, is that feeling of lacking something that stems from your relationship with your parents, or is that something that you just kind of worked through via your circle of influence over the years? Like where does that feeling of not worth? And I ask that question very selfishly because I have a little girl now. So
yeah,
like where do you feel like that kind of comes from?
It's a great question. And I've spent the last, especially, let's call it kind of 7 years doing really deep inner work.
Sure.
Like on a consistent basis to really say, okay, where did some of this subconscious programming come from?
Right.
And what we don't realize is, like most people don't realize, is that subconscious programming does happen a lot between 2 and 7. And I don't know if I can pinpoint back to where there was a lack of feeling like worthy or like being enough or feeling lovable, like, or feeling like I deserved love or something.
Yeah.
But there is things that I have noticed around even like how who the type of men that I attracted into my life. And for someone who has a young daughter, like 2 to 7 really matters. And between 2 and 7, I learned that if I wanted love, I had to compete for it because my stepmom came into the picture. And so I like at an early age learned, hey, if you want the love of a man, you have to compete for love.
Sure.
And how that manifested in my life is like in attracting people who always loved something else or someone else more than they ever like loved me. And it wasn't until I started really digging into this, like, what are these patterns that run our life the majority of the time, that 95% of us are operating from subconsciously, that if we can start to create process to create awareness, well then now they're in our awareness. Now that I know that pattern, I'm either consciously choosing that to attract that type of a person into my life, or I'm not. It's like I'm now getting to choose if I want to keep holding that pattern. But it is an interesting thing for people to just be aware of. And I believe that like through that awareness, you can figure out a lot.
And I want to unpack that just a little bit more because, it's interesting that your stepmom introduced that feeling of competition to you, because I think what people need to understand as adults, what you're talking about isn't a judgment against your stepmom, but the perception of a 5-year-old that is carried over into your 30-year-old self.
Yeah, and it's subconscious.
And people don't realize that narrative that you had in your mind at 5, how influential that is at fucking 30.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it really, it was what I came to now know and came to recognize was like from 18 to 28, it was a pattern that I was repeating in my life over and over and over again, with the type of men that I was attracting in.
Sure.
Ones that were either had someone else and I was like, they had someone else that they were still connected to emotionally, and it was like they weren't emotionally fully available. Or just like I dated a couple bodybuilders that like loved their sport more than they would ever fully love me.
Sure.
But it was like still attracting that emotionally unavailable man. And it came from that feeling of like, oh, this is how love is. It's like a competition. Love is a competition.
Yeah.
And just for me, the power of being able to recognize that really came from me spending and committing to consistency and meditation and a practice of awareness of like actually seeing what's going on inside. What are these stories and patterns that are happening on a consistent basis that I'm not aware are operating in my life?
Did you have an oh shit moment, or was it literally that progressive that you just kind of quote unquote eased into this new way of thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have had a lot of oh shit moments. I've had a lot of oh shit moments, like quite a few. But, in relation to this in particular, no, it did come in a conversation where I was just like, I did actually say oh shit. I was like, I remember the conversation. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, wow. I just recognized I was in a mastermind group and we were talking about subconscious patterning, like your subconscious mind. And then I had that realization like, oh, I'm realizing that this is a pattern that's been operating in my life for a long time. But in relation to the conversation about worthiness or love, it's like if you're not asking those deeper questions to say, where's the core? Like, where did this come from? Where did I learn this in my life?
Sure.
Or especially in those early kind of developmental ages between, say, 2 and 7, it's like, where did I learn the story that I'm not enough?
Was the accident sort of like the first major catalyst for you to start doing that deeper exploration? Because sort of everything's essentially stripped away from you, like that identity. Did that recovery process help you start diving deeper within yourself?
Yeah, it's funny because when like something crazy happens to someone, like a life, like, I mean, a near-death experience is really what it was. Yeah, it's life-altering for sure. And usually one of two things happens. Either like they just give up, or it's like a wake-up call and they like, and that's usually the story that you hear. Mine was like, I didn't give up. I was like, I will fucking walk again. I remember when the doctor said, you might not walk again. I was like, no, I will. Like, no doubt in my mind. But then my life took this like tumble downwards.
Oh, shit.
And it was within 6 months. So I was in the hospital for 2 months straight, which is like crazy.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in prison in a hospital room. But then I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And during that period of being in the wheelchair and doing twice a day physical therapy to literally repattern and learn how to walk again, I got introduced to the wrong group of friends in downtown Portland and started used ecstasy or Molly for the first time, New Year's 2010 to 11, got introduced to a guy that was in that scene that was a DJ. And so I went from having never done drugs in my life, being a fitness person, carrying so much like health and fitness to I had put on like 30 pounds. I'm in the wheelchair. I get introduced to a drug that, again, it was like searching outside of myself for a feeling that I wanted to have. And so as soon as I like used that for the first time, I kind of don't have a 50% on anything that I do. And so like within a month, I was full on. Like I was selling a half ounce of ecstasy a weekend.
Shut the fuck up.
Out of the nightclubs in Portland.
That's
This
crazy.
is where entrepreneur works against you. Wait a minute. If I like it, somebody else has to like it too. There's a business here.
I love it.
I mean, I've definitely been, having opened my first business at 18, I had a mind for business. Yeah. And so I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting that people go out and sell drugs as their next business opportunity. But what it was is that, I had lost who I was, like lost the sense of knowing who I am in this world and what my value is and what I came to do in this lifetime and who I came to be and the lives that I came to impact. I had lost that because to me, my body, my physical appearance meant so much. I had put so much like clout on my physical appearance that when my physical appearance was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore, like putting on the weight and being 30 pounds heavier and in a wheelchair. I started making really bad choices. Sure. And that lasted, just like selling drugs and being in that scene lasted for like 7 or 8 months. And like, thank God, like I'm so blessed that I didn't get caught.
What pulled you out?
The relationship really is what happened, is like the relationship got to the point where it became physically abusive.
Okay.
And when that happened, that was my breaking point where I was just like, dude, my conversation with myself was, I remember saying, if you don't change something significantly, you're going to end up dead or in prison. Yeah. And it was in that moment that I was just like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And I was just like, you just need to pack up and leave.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, well, where am I going to go? And it just literally was a period of 4 days from when I had that moment where I was like, if you don't change something significantly, you're going to end up dead or in prison, to my entire car was packed with everything that I owned. Yeah. And I had basically more or less picked on a map Phoenix, no real reason as to why to come here, other than I just felt like I wanted to be somewhere where the sun shined every day. Yeah. I was living in Portland, it was rainy, I had gone through like a level of depression going through this whole process, and I'm like, I need to start my life over. I need to start fresh. I need to not know anyone. I need to have zero connections, and that's what led me to packing up, driving from Portland through LA to Phoenix, and then landing here in December of 2011.
I think it's interesting amidst your battle with identity and image and self-worth. at the same time, a lot of your experience via fitness and probably a lot of other things, you still had enough self-worth to realize that if this motherfucker puts his hands on me again, like that's a bad deal.
Totally.
And there's a lot of people who don't have that.
Well, something really powerful that I learned, and actually really, it was only a couple of years ago that I had this learning through reading a book. The book is called The Mastery of Love, and the same author that wrote The Four Agreements. And one of the pieces in the book, it just says like, everyone has a breaking point. And your breaking point is actually the level all the way up. Your breaking point is the level to which you're actually self-abusing. So you'll allow abuse in your life.
Yeah, walk us through that.
You'll allow people in your life to abuse you all the way up to the level that you're self-abusing yourself, because then that's your breaking point. So it's like I was allowing abuse into my life from people, from men, from whatever, up to a level because I was self-abusing. I was looking in the mirror every day and picking my body apart, telling myself I wasn't good enough. And so that is self-abuse. Like if you're looking in the mirror and your first conversation is picking yourself apart, that's a form of self-abuse. And so I was self-abusing up to a certain level. So I was allowing that into my life. And then that breaking point was, for me, it was the physical abuse. Like that was my breaking point in that moment. And so just coming to that place of realizing, oh, wow, I actually was allowing a lot of abuse into my life through my 20s, even through a few years ago, not necessarily always physical abuse, but in just different ways, because ultimately I was self-abusing at my core over and over and over again.
Damn.
Wild.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. So you get to Arizona. Orange Theory.
Orange Theory, yeah. So, so grateful that I ended up here at the time that I did. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. Like, I had a place to stay for 2 weeks in Glendale, and then I was homeless, sleeping in my car, showered at the 24-Hour Fitness in North Scottsdale for 4 nights.
I've been there. For real.
Yeah. And it's, when I look back on it now, I'm like, dang, like, you know what? There's a level of resilience and grit that I have that no one can take away.
So I want to dive into that really quick because, and I'm on the record saying this multiple times, rock bottom is something that nobody should chase, right? But having been there, like, don't you feel like there's nowhere else you can go but up?
Yeah.
Like that's probably the only positive thing about shit in the bed.
It's true. It's like, well, it's that. And it's like, if you can find the gift in every situation, if you can truly have the mindset to say, I'm going to find the gift in the physical abuse. I'm going to find the gift in selling drugs. I'm going to find the gift in being homeless, because all of those, everything we go through in our life, it all comes down to perspective. If you can find the gift in a challenging time that you're going through, it shifts your perspective of what you're actually going through and how hard it actually is. So you can sit in the story about it being so hard, and you can sit in the challenge of what it is you're facing, or you can commit to saying, I'm going to find the gift in the situation, or I'm going to look back on my life, and maybe there's some unforgiveness or there's some resentment that you need to overcome. And it's like, hey, I'm going to find the gift in that relationship. I'm going to find so that you can glean wisdom. Like, you don't take wisdom from a situation unless you're actually willing to, like, say, what's the wisdom that I can take away from this challenging time that I went through. That's why people go through a lot, and then not everyone goes through a lot and comes out on the other side, right? So in order for that to happen, there's a different mindset around it that I think is important and powerful to be able to take.
So you go from homeless to
one day I'm sitting at Indian school in Scottsdale Road Starbucks and I'm on Craigslist looking for, I had started looking into other like fitness businesses here. So I had gone into 24-Hour Fitness. Do I want to train here? Gone into Lifetime Fitness. I was more interviewing them than I felt like they were interviewing me, because I knew what I was looking for. At that point, I had already been in fitness since I was 15. So I had like 7 years of experience in the fitness industry at the age of 22. I'm coming in, and it wasn't like I knew everything. I probably more acted like I knew everything, but I definitely didn't. But it was more like,
also a good quality to have.
it was more like, I had this feeling that I knew I wanted in a business and like in a place that I was working. And so I hadn't found that yet. Well, I applied for an assistant studio manager position at Pecos Ranch, Orange Theory Fitness in April of 2012. I went in and interviewed. It was a group interview. There was like 12 or 15 of us. And funny enough, one of the questions that they asked is, what is the biggest thing you've overcome in your life?
I love that question.
In the group interview.
Yeah.
But what it shows, and it's a question I ask now in interviews when I'm hiring, is it shows a level of resilience. Like if someone can overcome something very challenging and be able to talk about it and be able to be open about it in a group setting, and it's like, hey, it showed a level of resilience. And as I shared my personal story, Chris Price, who shout out Chris Price because she's the one that was like, hey, I see the potential. I'm going to hire you, and hired me in that first role at Orange Theory Fitness in 2012. I mean, she helped catalyze then what was this transformation that I've now gotten to go through since 2012, and then Travis Renner, who was the area rep who owned all of Arizona, he sat me down like a good 4 weeks into the role and just said, dude, I see so much potential in you. Like you have the capacity to do incredible things just in the next 5 years alone. He's like, I literally don't know if I've ever met someone with as much potential, but you've got to start working on yourself. You've got to be committed on the path of personal development. Yeah. Here's a book on leadership. I'd highly suggest you read it. And it was like, it wasn't the book. It was that he believed in me before I believed in myself.
Yeah.
Like he saw the potential in me before I saw the potential in myself, and just putting me on that path, similar to like trying drugs and then selling drugs 4 weeks later. I just went all in, and it's been a crazy, wonderful journey of, going through the personal development space, but more importantly, like I got to be a part of a startup business in the fitness industry where my background had been in being on the fitness side of the fitness business. And now I got to really move into the business side of fitness, and working I was the regional sales and operations in Arizona, which meant that every time a new franchise would open here, starting in late 2012, my responsibility was to go in, train the manager, train the franchisee on how to manage their team and how to lead them through the systems that were in place, and train all of the front desk staff, and then a location would open. And so from location about 4 to 14 in Arizona, that's what I was doing.
Jeez.
What's that process look like when you're getting a business up and running in the space? Like, are you going through like SOPs? Like, how's that all work? Like getting the business up and running?
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily when you're buying into a franchise model, that's one of the benefits of why someone chooses to buy into a franchise model is you're buying all of the systems that are in place. Right. So you're buying the support of, we had an area rep that was, in place. We had a team here that knows both the sales and operations side and the fitness side. We're coming in, and for you as the franchise owner, we're training you and your staff how to operate this business successfully. So yes, there's manuals that are already in place. There's a sales and operations manual. There's a fitness manual for the fitness instructors. There's a training an OT Fit training certification. So, a lot of the systems that are needed to scale successful businesses, if you're a single unit owner like you've been owning your own business, you have to build all of that. Right. You have to build the sales process. You have to know it. You have to build the operations process. So luckily, like in a franchise, a lot of those are already in place, and not all of them, but a good percentage of them are. Yeah. And then my role is to take that process and train it over and over again to make sure that when people open their business, that they're successful and they know what they're doing, and they can be on the path to grow right away out of the gates.
Super interesting. Yeah. Like, cause that whole process is like, I think that's very interesting to get people to attach to this idea, because a lot of people want to go like free reign and be like, I know exactly how to run shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, no, you don't. You have to follow the system and make this thing work. Like, to me, that entire process of like the tactics of getting that to work and implementation of that, like that's super interesting to me.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of learning that I got to have in just, how you can successfully scale a brand both across the U.S. and globally. It's like now there's 1,300 locations of Orange Theory worldwide. Right. And so just being able to see, hey, when you can build, and this is important for any business, it's like if you want to scale or multiply or duplicate yourself, you have to have processes in place. You've got to have, this is how we do this, and then be able to train people, because otherwise the business is then dependent on you if that's not there. Right. It's dependent on you, and that's how most businesses are. in the fitness space a lot too. And in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to ego. It comes down to, hey, like I want to know, I need to be seen as the person who knows more than anyone else in the business. And then therefore they don't develop other leaders to actually rise up. But if you're going to scale and actually open multiple locations and truly be a leader, you have to be willing to develop people to become better than you.
Right.
It's like when you develop people to become better than you, you work yourself out of a job, and that's a good thing when you're trying to scale businesses.
And it's so scary. I talk to a lot of affiliate owners on the CrossFit side, and because the barrier to entry is so low. I don't know what it takes to open an Orange Theory.
Yeah, it's about $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not even close to that to open a CrossFit affiliate, right? So the common dialogue I have in the very beginning is, if I do that, what's stopping them from opening their own place? I'm like, well, there's a huge chink in your armor. Yeah. If you think you have the wrong people in place that aren't worthy of what you have to offer as a leader and their development, if that's a thought. Yeah.
And it's a big challenge for a lot of people, is that they haven't gone through that, either worked for a leader who, my first real leader in Orange Theory here, he said that. He's like, at some point, he's like, if you develop to the level in which a bigger opportunity comes for you, he's like, I'll buy your plane ticket. Right. But that's leadership. Sure. To me, that's leadership. It's not, if I'm going to develop people, then they have to stay with me forever. It's like, no, you've got a chink in your armor. Your mindset is wrong. You should be thinking, and how powerful would it be to think, hey, how many people can I develop to be at the level in which they can go open their own business? And for me to know that I'm not only successful business owner, but I'm successful at duplicating myself as a business owner and creating more business owners. And are you going to have to, hire someone else? And is that a part of challenge? Yeah, absolutely. But if as a business owner, you want to care about the people's lives you're transforming, in order to do that, or the most powerful way I've found from my perspective to do that, is powerfully transform the lives of your team.
Right. I look at it from a stand like a coaching tree, right? I saw this graphically represented on one of those ESPN 30 for 30s about Bill Belichick, and everybody that's coached with him or under him, and then all the amazing coaches that have resulted from, and his coaching tree is huge. All these new head coaches and people that are killing it at both the pro and collegiate level, blah, 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 blah. And it really stuck with me because all of our coaches go through an apprenticeship process. It doesn't matter how credentialed or experienced they are, they got to pass the people test. Ultimately, that's the thing. Yeah. You can teach a monkey to do this job. And I only say that because my entire professional education is in fitness, and they taught me how to tell airplanes where to go in the Marine Corps. Yeah. So you can teach anybody a process, but not everybody can pass the people test, right? So, one of the things I tell my apprentices as they come into our process is, whether I hire you or not, whether you stay with us or not, my mission is to make sure that the fitness industry is in a better place as a result of you going through this process and going out there and doing it somewhere else than if you were to just go somewhere else and just get hired on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big part of leadership, is like, can you leave every person and situation and business and environment better than when you found it? Like every opportunity, every interaction, every Uber driver you come in contact with, every person you meet at a grocery store. It's like that's every interaction is an opportunity for leadership, in my opinion. Sure. And if you can start really feeling that, I mean, the impact that you make just in your interactions in a day can accelerate. When you get outside of yourself and you stop thinking me, I, it's like no impact. Sure. It's like, how much are you thinking about how significant you are, how important you are, and start thinking about the impact that your interactions with a team member, with a coworker, with a random person on the street can actually be the one thing that just shifts their life in a positive way.
100%. Now, up to your relationship with Travis and Chris, were you an active seeker of mentorship? Or was that the first real instance in your life where you're like, oh, this is a really good thing, I should go find more of this?
Totally. Yeah. I would say they were the main catalyst, I would say. You know, I grew up in a really challenging kind of socioeconomic situation. I grew up in a trailer park. I grew up on welfare. I didn't have a lot of kind of people putting me on the path of learning in my early years. Now, granted, I was very driven. I was very like hungry for success, you might say, at a young age, where I was just like, hey, I know that there's something else different, but I didn't have like specific. There was a lot of people in my early years that definitely, when I look back, were mentors, but it wasn't like I was intentionally seeking out mentorship.
Right.
But once, especially with Chris and Travis, once they began to like put me on the path of personal development and showed me like, hey, seeking out mentorship can be like really deeply learning from someone's books. Like that is mentorship. It's like, hey, I'm gonna study John C. Maxwell. Like I see John C. Maxwell as one of my greatest mentors in leadership, even though I haven't met him live in person. But I've learned so much from him. And so, you know, you can definitely seeking out mentorship is something that is important, but it's like, be willing to you have to be committed to being a good student, being the best student that there is. Like if you're going to just walk up to someone and be like, hey, will you mentor me? Just be aware, like, hey, what's the value that you're providing to the relationship?
100%.
What's the value that there needs to be an equal, or, you know, an energy exchange. It can't just be like you saying, hey, will you know, I've had people ask me like, will you just teach me everything you know? And it's like, well, yeah, I'd be happy to like give you some guidance and put you on the path. But like the reason that Travis, I believe, kept mentoring me is because I was so committed to the process. Is that like every time he gave me like, do this, I did it like all the way, you know? And it was just like, I couldn't get enough of that growth, but it also added, like put me into different environments, and I began seeking out mentorship in different places. You know, I joined a mastermind. I, you know, invested a lot of money studying high performance with Brendan Burchard. And starting in 2014, I started going to High Performance Academy and, you know, studying his work in Experts Academy. And that really like is part of what accelerated my process through even the transition from saying, hey, I'm going to go into this space of consulting and supporting business owners, CEOs, and their leadership team to implement the systems that I know are important to be able to scale a business, which, you know, making that transition into doing that. A big piece of it came because I had mentors that I saw built businesses around this. So I'm like, hey, this is a thing. This is something that's needed in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. At this current stage in your life, you know, you've gone through these different transitions. How would you currently define your identity that you view yourself as?
So I would say that I have a level of just knowingness in my core and my being that I was put on the planet to make an impact. And that the identity that I kind of connect to the most right now is like that, like I'm chosen to be here in this lifetime, and I came in this lifetime and signed an agreement, a soul contract is what I like to call it, to actually come here and make a difference in this planet. And so how that's going to manifest in my life over the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to come in different waves. It's going to come in different opportunities. But it's not like I now have this identity of I haven't built my identity on something now that can be taken away.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's like building my identity around the car I drive or the house I live in or the job that I have. Like all of that can be taken away. And so knowing that, you know, like I believe in God. So saying like, hey, I know that I was put here for a reason and that there's a reason why I came on this planet. Well, then that gives me an identity that it doesn't that doesn't change. You know, it's not something that can come or go or get taken away. And that's where I would say I stand now.
Nice. And do you think like fitness is still the vehicle for you to get, like, is your platform to get your message out there the fastest way, or do you see yourself finding other vehicles or platforms to spread the message? Because you mentioned like women empowerment and stuff like that. Like, what's your big vision for getting that out there, like spreading that message out there even further?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's a lot that I'm working on right now, and you know, a big piece is that I know that my level of understanding of how to operate business and how to scale businesses is a really powerful skill set. It's something that not only in the consultative work that I'm doing right now with helping CEOs scale, but also just in my future path is like, I definitely see myself over the next decade opening a lot of businesses and building a lot of leadership teams that are making an impact and developing leaders over and over again to basically duplicate the process that I experienced with Travis. Is like, I got to see when someone believes in you and gives you the chance and then commits to teaching you leadership, what is possible for someone's life.
Sure.
And so from a bigger picture scale, like, I'm grateful that I get the opportunity to speak and to be on stages and to share my message in a bigger way. And I see that continuing to catalyze and to kind of grow. But also, my vision for is fitness the thing? Is it the vehicle? I think it has the potential to be a vehicle again. I'm not in the fitness business world right now. I don't own a franchise or I'm not in that world, but I do see the potential down the road for me to like get back into it because I do see people's lives being transformed, but I right now have a really deep care for wellness and for some different wellness modalities that I see as being on the precipice of transformation that's happening in the health and fitness space, that people are realizing, hey, I can only beat my body up so much. Like I have to take care of my body too. And so I'm working on some things behind the scenes right now to really say, okay, well, what are these wellness modalities that can be a blend of helping people not only have their fitness be on point, but have their overall well-being, their nervous system, their stress levels really come to homeostasis and find better balance. So that's something that I'm working on right now.
That's dope. It's sort of like what we talked with Dave Lovell, because he was doing all his crowd therapy centers and all that stuff.
Dave actually, Dave and Chris co-owned Pecos Ranch, and Dave was the other person in the early days that hired me. So it's funny that you say that. So Dave and Chris owned Pecos Ranch, and they were the ones in the group interview that hired me.
Get out of here.
When I was beginning my early days of consulting, Dave had gone to open Seattle, Capitol Hill for Orange Theory. He had bought Orange Theory there, and he flew me up, and so that was one of my first consulting gigs, was Dave flying me to Seattle to help them launch the brand in Seattle.
Okay, that's fire.
The circle
is such a small circle.
The circle is small.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. That was cool because he was pitching the whole message about recovery and wellness and all that stuff, and
being under recovered.
Right.
We preach that message at the gym all the time.
Yeah, because prior to those conversations I had, it was just like fucking yourself up, like football, bodybuilding, just destroy yourself and just go. But then you come from that standpoint where people are meditating now and seeing I have to take care of my vessel that I'm in. They're just like breaking it down.
Right.
Totally.
Super interesting mindset, and I think you're just on the forefront of that.
Yeah, I see it being over the next 2 to 3 years that I'm seeing the shift that's happening. I see the potential of where things are going. People's awareness and consciousness is shifting. Meditation is becoming, Headspace, I don't know how many users in total, but over 1 million people that are using a single app for meditation and seeing the power that this is not just some woo-woo thing, but that your actual nervous system, it has a significant benefit. Your focus has a significant benefit by just creating this spaciousness on a daily basis through a modality that you don't have to do anything. Just sit and breathe. That's it. Sit and breathe. That's it.
That's almost worse than working out. To sit there oh my God. It's difficult.
But the power is you don't have to. People try to go all in. It's like you don't go from not being. We have great stories about that. We are ADD. That is an identity.
Right.
Be aware of the stories that you say. Because if I can't sit still. Well, then of course you're not going to sit still. Right. It's no. Can I breathe? Yes. Do I breathe every single minute of every single day? Yes. Yeah. Can I commit to 1 minute of breath with that being my sole focus? Yes. Great. Now can I do 2? Now can I do 3? Just like lifting weights. Yeah. It's just like training at the gym. Just commit to the smallest viable amount of commitment that you can make, and then watch yourself be able to progress through that.
It's all, it always starts. I don't like to speak in absolutes, but I feel like this one is with shifting the narrative.
Changing the story.
You have to, from one of negation to affirmation. Like that's where it starts. You got to get away from no and move towards yes, and commit to the yes, right? And that, like you were just describing, that yes, however small, right, just builds on itself.
Totally, yeah. And that's where progress and transformation happens. Being willing to people don't realize they can shift their identity in a moment. They just have to like choose to be. It's not people. Some great content that I have been taught is like the flame is a flame, and you talk about like when you talk about change or transformation, true transformation, like the hottest part of the flame is right in the center of the flame. But on the outside of the flame, people start thinking they want to become fitter, and so they start changing their behaviors. So they start exercising, or they start dieting, or whatever, and so they think, if I change this behavior, then I'm going to transform. And it's like, well, that's actually the outer part of the flame. The next inner part is the structures that support that behavior change. Well, I'm going to hire a trainer, or I'm going to go and find a buddy, and you and I are going to do that together. So our structure is that we're doing this together. That's a structure that supports an even greater acceleration of transformation. But where the core of transformation happens is when someone chooses that I'm going to be healthy. I am a healthy person. And then the structures and the behaviors that follow suit from the identity that they start owning, because they start asking different questions. They start saying, well, how does a healthy person, does a healthy person eat? And how does a healthy person move their body? And so if you can get this shift of like, this is a new kind of identity statement that I'm owning, then those structures and behaviors can support it. But a lot of people try to start on the outside and don't actually get to the core of where that transformation starts, which is changing who you see yourself as.
I like that. That's dope. Woo, I like that. Where can everybody go and connect with you and everything that you're going, both personally and in your business? Yeah,
so personally, feel free to jump on my Instagram. It's Amanda Goolsby Coaching. And, I drop some little wisdom nuggets and morning routine stuff, and, times when I'm teaching leadership and business. And so happy to connect there. And my website's under transformation right now. It's experiencing its own identity transformation. But my name, amandagoolsby.com, takes it to where that transformation will kind of come in place.
Dope.
Cool.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you making the time.
That was so cool.
You're welcome back to the Valley, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be in it is hitting 97 degrees today. So
it's a winter day outside.
I did come at the right time, but I definitely super grateful for just the mornings here. I think there's something really special about starting a day where getting outside and being in the sunshine and just saying hey, it's a new day. Every day is a fresh start. Yeah. We get to choose who we're going to be today and how we're going to show up, and the people's lives that we're going to impact. And so being here, I know this is home. It feels like home to me. I love the sunshine, and super grateful to be back.
Oh, yeah. Really appreciate your energy. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We know you're busy and you got a lot of things going on. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah. For everybody out there in our tribe, go ahead and support everything that Amanda has going on. And until next time, feed me, fuel me.